The Invisible Conductor. The string quartet filled the grand ballroom with Vivaldi, but Nora Winters heard only her husband's laughter cutting through the music like a discordant note. She stood by the refreshment table, elegant in her emerald dress that Vincent had criticized as too plain before they left home. The crystal flute trembled slightly in her hand as she watched him hold court among Pittsburgh's business elite. "My wife?" Vincent's voice carried across the room as he gestured toward her. "Oh, she's just keeping herself busy with household matters. You know how it is, Jeffries." He winked at the older businessman. "Some women simply aren't made for the professional world." Several guests chuckled politely. Nora's cheeks burned, but her smile remained fixed in place. 10 years ago, she had been first-chair violinist with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, her future blazing with promise. Then she met Vincent Winters, charismatic entrepreneur and self-proclaimed visionary in renewable energy technologies. "You could play for fun," he had told her after their wedding, "but a serious career, that would only distract from what we're building together." His company needed a proper corporate wife, someone to host dinners and support his networking, not someone disappearing for international tours and late-night rehearsals. Nora excused herself from the gala, slipping into the empty hallway. Through the partially open door of an adjacent music room, she spotted a magnificent Stradivarius displayed in a glass case. Her fingers tingled with memory. "Would you like to try it?" Nora startled. An elderly woman with silver hair had appeared beside her, eyes twinkling with understanding. "I couldn't possibly," Nora whispered, though her heart raced with longing. "I'm Josephine Renaud, the benefactor for tonight's event. That instrument is meant to be played, not just admired." Before she could respond, Vincent's voice boomed from the doorway. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere. The Hamiltons want to discuss our summer retreat." Josephine handed Nora a business card. "Call me. Music shouldn't stay silent forever." Later that night, after Vincent had fallen asleep, Nora slipped into their home studio, the room Vincent used primarily to display awards and entertain colleagues. From the back of a storage closet, she retrieved a case she hadn't opened in years. The violin inside wasn't a Stradivarius, but it had been her companion through conservatory and beyond. She played softly, fingers remembering what her mind had tried to forget. The next morning, she called the number on Josephine's card and was connected to the Renaud Music Foundation. "We offer private master classes for exceptional talents," Josephine explained. "Twice weekly, evenings only. Complete discretion, if that's what you need." For 6 months, Nora maintained her facade, corporate wife by day, musician by night. While Vincent attended late business meetings, she reconnected with her art. Her technique returned, then flourished under Josephine's guidance. "You have something special," Josephine told her after a particularly moving rendition of Bach. "Something many technically. Perfect musicians lack authentic emotion." Nora said nothing about Vincent's dismissive comments or how he introduced her to colleagues as "my wife." She used to play some music. Instead, she channeled everything into her violin, creating a separate world where she existed as herself, not merely as an extension of her husband. What Vincent didn't know, couldn't imagine, was that his wife was preparing for something extraordinary. The symphony was holding private auditions for a special performance series, and Josephine had submitted Nora's name. Tonight was just another business function to Vincent, but to Nora, it was the beginning of her renaissance. Crescendo of whispers, the autumn leaves scattered across the driveway as Nora hurried home. Violin case concealed in an oversized tote bag. She had exactly 43 minutes before Vincent returned from his business lunch, plenty of time to hide evidence of her afternoon masterclass with Josephine. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 3 times as she slipped through the door, its resonant tones both a warning and a comfort. "Mrs. Winters, there's a package for you." Teresa, their housekeeper, appeared from the kitchen holding a slender rectangular box. "Came by special courier. They insisted on your signature only." Nora's heart quickened. "Thank you, Teresa." "And Vincent, still at the Drummond meeting," Teresa confirmed with a knowing smile. Though never explicitly stated, Teresa had become a silent ally in Nora's musical resurrection, conveniently polishing silver in distant rooms when Nora practiced during Vincent's absence. Upstairs in her private sitting room, the one space Vincent rarely entered, Nora opened the package. Inside lay an elegant invitation embossed with gold lettering. "The Renaud Foundation Winter Showcase. Featured soloist, Nora Winters. Beneath it, a handwritten note from Josephine read, "It's time the world heard you again." The showcase was scheduled for December 15th, the same night as Vincent's company gala. A collision of worlds that seemed both impossible and inevitable. Her phone vibrated with a text from Vincent, bringing Harrington home for dinner. Something impressive. 7 p.m. Charles Harrington was a potential investor Vincent had been courting for months. These impromptu dinners had become Vincent's favorite way to showcase not just his business acumen, but his picture-perfect life, including his accommodating wife. By 6:30, Nora had prepared Vincent's favorite rosemary lamb and arranged fresh flowers throughout the dining room. She changed into the navy dress Vincent deemed appropriately sophisticated for business associates. "There she is," Vincent announced when Harrington entered. The woman behind the man. "Nora makes a lovely home, doesn't she?" Harrington, a trim man with intelligent eyes, shook her hand. "Charmed, Mrs. Winters. Vincent speaks highly of your domestic talents." During dinner, the conversation revolved around venture capital and market projections until Harrington mentioned his recent trip to Vienna. "The Philharmonic was extraordinary," he commented. "Do you enjoy classical music, Mrs. Winters?" Before she could answer, Vincent chuckled. "Nora played violin in college, a hobby she's wisely set aside. Isn't that right, darling?" "Actually," Harrington said, studying Nora with sudden interest, "I believe I've seen your name mentioned in Josephine Renaud's circle. She rarely takes on students these days." Vincent's fork paused midway to his mouth. "There must be some mistake. My wife hasn't touched a violin in years." The moment stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Nora met Harrington's gaze, recognizing the deliberate opening he'd provided. "I've recently returned to playing," she said quietly. "Ms. Renaud has been kind enough to offer guidance." Vincent's laugh was sharp. "A little practice here and there hardly constitutes a return to music." Nora understands where priorities lie in a successful partnership. After Harrington left, the silence between them was deafening. Vincent poured himself a third scotch, watching her clear the dishes. "What game are you playing?" he finally asked. "Embarrassing me in front of Harrington with talk of music lessons?" "It's not a game, Vincent. Music was never just a hobby for me. We discussed this years ago. My business requires a certain image, and that image doesn't include a wife with her own career, her own identity." Vincent's expression hardened. "I have a board meeting in Singapore next week. We'll discuss this ridiculous situation when I return." With Vincent away, Nora intensified her preparations for the showcase. Josephine introduced her to Dmitry Volkov, the renowned conductor who would lead the Foundation's orchestra. "Your technique is impeccable," Dmitry told her after their first rehearsal. "But there's something more, a voice in your playing that speaks of both loss and resurrection." What Nora didn't realize was that Harrington had mentioned their dinner conversation to Josephine, who then extended a special invitation to Vincent's entire executive board for the winter showcase without naming the featured soloist. The whispers of Nora's reemergence spread through Pittsburgh's musical community like a gathering storm. Her name appeared on the Foundation's website, then in a small article in the art section of the Tribune, all while Vincent, oceans away, remained oblivious to the symphony building around his wife. Dissonant notes, the chilled December air carried the promise of snow as Vincent's town car pulled up to the Ellsworth Hotel. Tonight's dinner was more than just another business function. It was his carefully orchestrated finale to secure Harrington's investment before the year's end. He straightened his bow tie in the reflection of his phone screen, noting with satisfaction that Dr. Winters' energy was trending on local business channels. "Remember," he told Nora as they walked through the hotel's ornate entrance, "Harrington brings the Preston Group with him tonight. Their combined investment could triple our expansion timeline." Nora nodded, resplendent in a burgundy gown that complemented her newly confident posture. 3 weeks had passed since Vincent's return from Singapore, during which an uneasy truce had settled between them. He had mentioned nothing more about her music, and she had been careful to keep her rehearsal schedule hidden. The private dining room buzzed with Pittsburgh's elite. Vincent guided Nora through the crowd with a proprietary hand at her back, introducing her with practiced phrases. "My supportive wife. The heart of our home. knows exactly when to let business be business. Midway through appetizers, Harrington raised his glass. "To new partnerships," he announced, eyes twinkling with something Nora couldn't quite identify. "And to unexpected talents discovered in the most surprising places." Vincent beamed, assuming the comment referenced his recent innovation in solar storage technology. "You're too kind, Charles. Though I hardly keep my talents hidden." "Actually," Harrington replied, "I was referring to the remarkable violin soloist I heard at the Renault Foundation's preview last week, a performance of Sibelius that left the room breathless." Nora's hand trembled slightly around her water glass. The preview had been a closed rehearsal. She hadn't realized Harrington was among the select audience. Vincent laughed. "Always the arts patron, Charles. Though I find business orchestrations far more compelling than musical ones." "Interesting perspective," said a silver-haired woman as she approached their table. Josephine Renault, elegant in midnight blue, extended her hand to Vincent. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced, Mr. Winters. I'm Josephine Renault." Vincent's smile remained fixed, though confusion flickered in his eyes. "Ms. Renault, your foundation's reputation precedes you." "As does yours," Josephine replied coolly. "Though I'm surprised we haven't crossed paths before, given how frequently your wife graces my music room." The table fell silent. Vincent's gaze darted between Josephine and Nora, his expression hardening into something dangerous. "My wife's occasional dabbling in music is hardly worth mentioning in professional circles," he said smoothly, though his knuckles whitened around his fork. Josephine's eyebrow arched. "Dabbling? Perhaps you're unfamiliar with the critical acclaim her recent recordings have received. The Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra doesn't extend soloist invitations to dabblers, Mr. Winters." Vincent's laugh was brittle. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. Nora set aside those aspirations years ago to support our shared vision." "Vincent," Nora began quietly. "Not now," he cut her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're discussing business." Harrington cleared his throat. "Actually, that's precisely why I invited Josephine tonight. The Preston Group isn't just interested in energy innovation. We're expanding our arts endowment. Josephine suggested your wife might bridge both worlds rather brilliantly." Vincent's face flushed. "My wife isn't involved in company operations." "That's not entirely accurate," interjected Preston, a stern-faced woman at Harrington's right. "We've reviewed the Foundation's recent digital presence. The video series featuring Mrs. Winters' violin performances has generated substantial engagement, particularly among demographics your company has struggled to reach." Nora watched. Vincent's composure fracture, revealing something between rage and disbelief. In the 10 years of their marriage, she had never directly challenged his narrative about her career. Now strangers were rewriting it before his eyes. "If you'll excuse us," Vincent said tightly, rising from his chair. "My wife and I need a moment." In the deserted hotel corridor, Vincent's control evaporated. "What exactly have you been doing behind my back?" "Recordings? Performances? Making me look like a fool in front of my investors? I never intended. Do you have any idea what's at stake tonight? Years of work, millions in potential funding, and you choose now to indulge this hobby?" The word hung between them, small yet devastating. In that moment, Nora realized Vincent truly couldn't see beyond his own ambitions to recognize hers. "It's not a hobby, Vincent. It never was. The symphony has offered me first chair and soloist position for their spring season." Vincent stared at her as though seeing a stranger. "And my company gala? Were you planning to simply not attend? The Foundation showcase is the same night." His laugh was hollow. "Of course it is. So this is your choice? Music over our marriage?" Nora straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "No, Vincent. This is me refusing to choose between who I am and who you want me to be." Back in the dining room, conversation halted as they returned. Vincent smoothly redirected discussion to emission projections and market penetration, while Nora sat silently, the weight of her unspoken truth hanging in the air like the final note of an unfinished symphony. The unexpected solo. The week following the disastrous dinner unfolded in frigid silence. Vincent retreated into his work, leaving for the office before dawn and returning well past midnight. Nora continued her rehearsals with renewed determination. the upcoming showcase now representing far more than a musical performance. On the morning of December 15th, Vincent appeared at breakfast for the first time in days, impeccably dressed in his finest suit. "The gala begins at 8, he said without preamble, placing an elegant jewelry box beside her coffee cup. Inside lay a stunning diamond necklace, beautiful, expensive, and unmistakably a statement of ownership. "I expect you'll be ready by 7. Nora closed the box gently. "Vincent, I told you. The showcase is a self-indulgent distraction," he finished coldly. "Harrington called yesterday. The Preston Group is hesitating on our deal, citing concerns about company stability. Your little musical rebellion is threatening everything I've built." "That's not fair," Nora protested. "My career has nothing to do with your business negotiations, doesn't it? Preston specifically mentioned being impressed by your performances. They seem to think you're some kind of brand ambassador for Winter's Energy now, a role you've taken without consulting me." Nora set down her coffee cup. "Perhaps they see something you don't, that partnerships thrive when both parties are valued for their unique contributions." Vincent's phone chimed with a message. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. "The board will be watching tonight. Every major investor, every potential partner. Your absence would send a clear message about your commitment to our future." "And what about your commitment to mine?" Nora asked quietly. Vincent straightened his tie, already retreating emotionally. 7 o'clock, Nora. Make the right choice." After he left, Nora sat motionless at the breakfast table, the weight of the decision pressing on her. The diamond necklace gleamed coldly from its velvet bed, while upstairs her violin waited in its case, warm wood and possibilities. Her phone buzzed with a text from Josephine. "The orchestra is ready. Are you?" At 5 o'clock, Nora began preparing, not for the corporate gala, but for her performance. She laid out her concert attire, a flowing midnight blue gown that transformed her into the musician she had always been beneath Vincent's carefully constructed veneer. At 6:30, as she fastened her grandmother's modest pearl earrings, Teresa appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Winters called," the housekeeper said. "He wants to know if you need the driver." Nora met her gaze in the mirror. "Please tell him I've made other arrangements." Teresa nodded, understanding the significance. "He won't make it easy." "No," Nora agreed, securing her violin case. "But some songs are worth the difficult notes." The Renault Foundation Hall glowed with warm light as Nora arrived backstage. Dmitri greeted her with concerned eyes. "Josephine told me about your situation. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" Nora took a deep breath. "More certain than I've been about anything in 10 years. From behind the curtain she could hear the murmur of the audience filling the auditorium. Josephine had mentioned ticket sales exceeding expectations, but nothing prepared Nora for the sight that greeted her when she peered through a gap in the heavy velvet. A full house, including, remarkably, Charles Harrington and the entire Preston Investment Group, conspicuously absent from Vincent's gala. 5 minutes, the stage manager whispered. Nora closed her eyes, centering herself in the calm before performance. This moment represented everything she had secretly fought to reclaim: her identity, her passion, her voice. When she took the stage, the spotlight bathing her in its revealing glow, Nora raised her violin with steady hands. The first notes of Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto flowed from her instrument, pure and unapologetic. Each phrase told her story: the years of silence, the quiet rebirth, the strength found in finally standing alone in her truth. Midway through the first movement, a commotion near the back doors momentarily drew her attention. Vincent stood in the entrance, his expression unreadable as he watched her perform. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded hall, his wide with something between anger and astonishment, hers clear and unwavering as her music soared above them both. Harmonious resolution. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Roses cascaded onto the stage as Nora took her final bow, her cheeks flushed with triumph and emotion. Backstage, Josephine embraced her. "Magnificent," the older woman whispered. "You played not just with skill, but with your entire soul." As the crowd dispersed into the winter night, Nora changed from her performance gown and carefully packed her violin. When she emerged from the dressing room, Vincent was waiting in the empty corridor, bow tie loosened, hands thrust deep in his pockets. "You missed the gala," he said, his voice surprisingly devoid of accusation. "Yes. Harrington and the entire Preston group missed it too." A pause. "They were here instead." Nora nodded, unsure what to say. The performance had emptied her of words, leaving only raw truth between them. Vincent ran a hand through his meticulously styled hair, disheveling it in a way she hadn't seen in years. "I didn't know," he said finally. "When you played just now, I didn't know you could create something like that." "You never asked," she replied softly. "You never really listened." They stood in silence, years of unspoken grievances and misunderstandings hovering in the space between them. "Harrington approached me after your performance," Vincent continued. "They're still interested in the investment, but with a condition." He met her gaze directly. "They want the partnership to include your involvement with the foundation. Some sort of cultural ambassador role connecting sustainable energy with the arts." Nora studied his face, searching for the familiar signs of manipulation or control. Instead, she found something unfamiliar, uncertainty and perhaps a glimmer of respect. "What did you tell them?" she asked. "That I needed to consult with my wife, my partner." He emphasized the last word, testing its unfamiliar weight. Outside, snow had begun to fall, transforming Pittsburgh into a hushed, expectant landscape. They walked together toward the parking lot, their footprints making parallel paths in the fresh powder. 10 years ago," Vincent said abruptly, "when I suggested you set aside your music, I convinced myself it was for our future. The truth is, I was afraid." "Of what?" "That your light would outshine mine. That if you succeeded on your own terms, you wouldn't need what I could provide." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Tonight, watching you on that stage, I realized what I've been denying us both." Nora waited, the violin case solid and reassuring in her grip. "A true partnership," he continued. "Not the imitation I've been orchestrating all these years." The word choice, orchestrating, hung between them, acknowledged with the ghost of a smile. "I don't know if we can rebuild what's been broken," Nora said honestly. "But I know I can't go back to silence." Vincent nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if there's a way forward where both our symphonies can be heard." In the distance, the cathedral bells chimed midnight, marking the transition to a new day. Nora thought about the young violinist she had been, the silenced wife she had become, and the artist now standing in her reclaimed power. "That," she said finally, "would require a completely new composition for both of us." As they reached the car, Vincent hesitated before opening her door. "I've never been particularly musical," he admitted, "but I'm willing to learn a different rhythm if you'll teach me." The diamond necklace he had presented that morning remained in its box at home, but something more valuable had been offered in its place, the possibility of genuine recognition. "Start by listening," Nora told him, her voice gentle but firm. "Real listening is the foundation of any harmony worth creating." The snow continued to fall around them, covering the sharp edges of their past with something softer, something that held the potential for transformation. Nora knew the road ahead would require careful negotiation of new boundaries and old wounds. Vincent's awakening might be temporary, prompted by Harrington's business interests rather than true enlightenment. Yet as they drove through the quiet streets, the notes of her performance still resonating in both their minds, Nora felt something she hadn't experienced in years, not just the triumph of being heard, but the tentative hope of being understood. Whether their marriage could be salvaged remained uncertain, but her own identity, her music, her voice, her worth, was no longer negotiable. Some truths once revealed cannot be hidden again. Some songs, once played, change both performer and audience forever. In the delicate silence between them, possibility hung like the final resolved chord of a complex symphony. Not an ending, but a momentary rest before whatever movement might come next.